good to have you with us in the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. We continue with our special series and special focus on mental health this pandemic season. We've covered many aspects of how the pandemic, the COVID, lockdown, economic stress is all affecting our mental health, and how as we battle COVID and talk about vaccines and talk about COVID drugs and COVID management and the healthcare infrastructure, we should also talk about the mental health aspect of it. We should also talk about what are the newer issues or the symptoms that have increased. We should also talk about how it is affecting people, how to go about getting some help. And tonight I'm going to specifically focus on the youth. Those in college just preparing to enter the world of work, employment, figuring out a career, preparing for some or the other kind of employment entrance exam, and how because the pandemic has hit them in such a bad way, thrown all of their plans right out of the window, derailed every single thing that they had written down since last year, how that has begun to impact their minds. How many of them are having to rethink their entire life plans and dreams and choice of careers, and how that is also impacting them. How do we tackle that aspect, that devastating aspect on the youngsters of our country? Unsure about your academic cycle, unsure about the exams that are held for many of the government jobs in state after state because they're all getting delayed again and again. The government's own hiring process itself has been delayed in many places, in many departments. The private job market is shrinking, ever shrinking job market. The second wave and the series of lockdowns across states hasn't helped that at all. And of course, many have gone through personal loss of a loved one to COVID, which is just added to it. In fact, this is what I want to talk about tonight. And just to give you an insight into how COVID is impacting us. In the first wave, there were about 3,500 to 4,000 distress calls a month going to NIMHANS about concerns, COVID stigma, financial struggle. In the second wave, the number of distress calls went from 3,500 to 4,000 to 14,000 a month. And the concerns were a lot more graver as well. The concerns were not just about stigma or economic pressures, but about loss, about grief, bereavement, and death. And that's impacting our youngsters as well. So let's talk about this and say good evening to the panelists who are joining me on this conversation. We've also opened up our phone lines. If you have a question for our experts, if you have an experience you want to share with us, do pick up the phone and dial the numbers that will be flashing on your screens. Jitin Chawla, Career Counselor and Director for the Center for Career Development, joins us this evening. Dr. Abhijit Natkin, Psychiatrist and Associate Professor of Global Mental Health from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Anand Chalani, leading success coach and expert in mental health and strength. Dr. Sameer Parekh, Director of Department of Mental Health and Behavioral Sciences at Fortis Healthcare. And Dr. Sekhar, Professor and Head for Center for PSS and Disaster Management at NIMHANS and Neurosciences, also joins us this evening. I also have two special guests. Anurag Sharma is a CA aspirant joining us from Allahabad, and Swatantra, who's a UPSC aspirant who's currently based in Madhya Pradesh, also joining us right now. And we're going to talk about them and the challenges that they face. But first up, let's talk about the larger concept here. And Jitin, I want to start off with you if you have insights on this. Most of the exams, entrance exams, government exams have been delayed. How are the youngsters really dealing with all this uncertainty now?
So a lot of uncertainty there, absolutely what you have mentioned. People are going through quite a lot of stress and anxiety. Initially it was this thing for the board exam if it was a 12th class student. And then graduate students at various stages, they were wondering that when is my exam going to happen, or people who are pursuing CA, or people who are preparing for subsequent competitive exams like various exams. So they all have been waiting. Waiting otherwise is also not easy. Earlier, the IIT system, people used to even give the IIT JEE exam for like after 12, they would wait for three years. But every passing year, their ability to do the exam well would come down. So that is one. Second thing is, it also depends on their vulnerability. Like, what is their socioeconomic background? What is happening in the family? What are their pre-existing mental conditions? What kind of support system do they have? Do they have elder brothers, sisters who are probably more mature, more well set, and they're getting assurances that, look, if not this, then this, if not this, then this, and there's a system which is going to support them. So, in case that is not existing, extracurricular activities, nothing is happening. They can't go out, they can't play, and at the home, then one is sucked into a lethal combination of, I would say, it's like a drug of Netflix or online series or something else which is not really helping them come out of it. Rather, they'll keep on getting more and more into it, and they'll keep on expressing that I don't know what to do. And while saying this, they would actually not be able to set up their goals and work towards one thing. Yeah. So that is how I have been seeing people.
Yes, obviously different people deal with it differently. For some, the stress is more. There's already a family pressure, economic pressure, various different things that you have to keep in mind. And if your plan just, goes, so haywire, it becomes problematic. Anand Julani also joins us this evening. Good evening to you. But Anand, before I come to you, let me go across to Dr. Sekar and ask Dr. Sekar as well. Dr. Sekar, the higher number of distress calls or cases that we are seeing, are they specific to a certain age group, or are we actually seeing people struggle across the board? Dr. Sekar, I think you're on mute. You may have to unmute yourself.
Good evening. And as you have earlier stated, it differs across the age groups what the type of a thing we are getting on a national helpline on psychosocial support. Okay. It's impacting school-going children in a different manner in terms of whether it's a primary or secondary or higher secondary or the college students or those who are entering into the job market per se. From a large number of support calls, what we are receiving in our helpline, we see that there is a large amount of fear, anxiety, frustration, hopelessness, some sort of a biological disturbances in terms of sleep and anger, some low mood or confusion, and certain adjustment problems occurring, and lack of opportunities for them to look up at the current point of a time, worried about certain job opportunities, family pressure on them, and self-blaming for most of the issues which is occurring around, and threat of a job identity itself is currently there. These are the type of impact what we are seeing, and it is spread across the age group, and currently it is much larger because in the second lockdown period, it was more about going to the school or going to the college and how the exams are going to be. But now when they want to get the graduation and other thing, there's quite a bit of issues in terms of worries of how they are going to address the type of issues, how it is going to be is one of a major concern what the people are having currently, especially the youth, as well as the students who are on a pass out mode from a higher secondary to the next level, as well as students who are graduating and other thing also, it's becoming a major issue.
Yes, because if you look at what the status is currently, most of the exams, whether it's the UPSC, whether it's the CA entrance exam, whether it's the government, state government's own entrance exams, they've all been pushed. And already last year everything went haywire, and people were hoping that this year at least they will be able to get a handle on it and move on. And now they are stuck. For example, Anand, there were a lot of UPSC aspirants who missed their last attempt because of this, and now are having to look and redesign their entire life plans, which in current job scenario is also a big challenge. And now, how do they tackle the impact this may have on their mental health?
That's a great question. I think a few things is that, most of us forget that redesigning is part of life. And I say that because, in some parts of the world, the average person changes careers, not just jobs, 4 times. So we're not a piece of science or a piece of art, and we're always in a process of redesigning ourselves. And my biggest feedback to people, I can understand the fear, and I can understand the stress that comes with it, but that's because we're in a mindset of such certainty. We need certainty to feel like we're moving forward in our life. I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's that we got to shift from a mindset of certainty to a mindset of growth, to a mindset of discovery. And that's the only way we're going to find a way through this. You may take time right now and find actually what I wanted to do in my life may not be actually what I want to do. That actually I'm more fulfilled doing something else. And what I would say and if you are clear on what you want to do, what I would say is remember one thing, delays are not denials. And if you look at that and say, my dreams may be delayed right now, but they're not denied. And let me take this time to really understand what is important to me. Am I just chasing a degree? Am I just chasing, some sort of achievement to make me feel happy in my life? Or am I going to really focus on my happiness? I believe that all of us have been brought up thinking that achievement will make us feel happy. And I think COVID is here to remind us that happiness is that foundation for success. Abhinav Bindra, my dear friend, told me, he said that I spent my whole life thinking the gold medal would give me happiness. Now I've realized that happiness is the gold. And I think if people can take this time to redesign their life around happiness with themselves, to make mental health the foundation of it rather than the outcome of it, I think that will give them a chance to get through COVID. And yes, their dreams will be delayed, but actually they'll find a more fulfilled future waiting for them.
Okay, fair enough. So to design your mindset accordingly, and interesting that you say that an average person changes careers 4 times. I am hoping that my team is not listening to you right now and getting ideas right now, Anand. But perhaps some kind of a positive word there coming in for those who are currently staring at the future and wondering what's going to happen. Dr. Abhijit Natkarni, a lot of anxiety does come about when there is uncertainty. And when you've seen a lot of grief and loss around you and you're staring at an uncertain future, what should you do? How do you deal with it?
Oh, there are several things that one could do, and I think a lot has been spoken and written about it. I'll get to that in a moment, but before I do that, I think I have certain issues with the framing of the problem and also the proposed solutions and the narratives around it. Because I feel the framing of the problem is very privileged. It's a very urban-centric, privileged narrative of people doing IITs, UPSCs, etc. And the proposed solutions around redesigning multiple career changes, etc., with all due respect to the previous panelists, it's not something that's available to a large chunk of the Indian population. A large chunk of the youth who is looking at a future of uncertainty doesn't know where the next job is going to come from, doesn't know where the food on the plate is going to come from. So let alone kind of thinking about an ideal future, like the gold medal in the Olympics. I mean, it's not that. I mean, they're not even looking at the bronze medal. It's about a day-to-day survival issue for a lot of people. And I think we need to be mindful of that when we are creating these narratives and also building up the solutions to this. So to answer your question, Tanvi, is there are a lot of things that can be done, but again, also some of these solutions might be accessible to certain people and some of them might not be. So simple things such as accepting, if someone is stressed and anxious about the situation, accepting that one is stressed and anxious is very, very important. Trying to run away from it, trying to hide it is going to just lead to a festering wound and will kind of make the problem bigger. And you need to if you're experiencing all of these difficulties, it's important to find someone you can talk to. This could be someone who's in the family, this could be someone from your friend circle, any relatives, or if you do not have anyone who could give you a listening ear or an empathetic ear, it could be using the helplines that you have spoken about. And then there are multiple, I mean, fortunately in India we have kind of had a rash of different helplines coming up who are providing these kind of supportive services. Again, we have to be mindful that there is going to be asymmetric access to this. There is going to be a certain amount of inequity in accessibility to these kind of support systems because of access to telecom services, etc. But that's one kind of way people could seek help. Other simple things that people could do, young people could do, is find things that distract them, do things that are that interest them, staying away from too much of misinformation on social media. I mean, easier said than done, but it's very important to kind of be able to kind of check the credibility of information that is coming from social media. Taking care of your sleep, diet, little bit of exercise within the constraints of the whole curfews, lockdown, social distancing, etc., are some of the simple things that people should try out to see if it helps them reduce the stress and the anxiety. And if none of these things work, then it's very, very, very important to seek professional help. One of the biggest problems when these stress and anxiety and depression goes out of hand is that people are reluctant to seek help. And when you're reluctant to seek help, what happens is that the problem does not go away. I mean, you can't push it under the carpet. It just keeps becoming bigger and bigger. And the longer you kind of take, the longer you take in seeking time, the more time you take in seeking help, the bigger the problem becomes, and more time it takes to resolve. So the faster you seek help, the better.
Okay, so the minute you realize that this is something that you're not able to handle, do seek help. Dr. Samir Parekh, would you want to come in on this as well, as to how do they go about seeking help? Who should they reach out to when they have a specifically tough period as they prepare for their next job interview or exam?
No, I completely endorse what Dr. Natkin said. It starts with basic unmuting yourself and talking to anyone available around you whom you trust. A sibling, a friend, a colleague, a senior, a teacher, anyone. We don't need to over-expertise the problem of mental health. Be very clear, we have several 100% shortage of experts in our country. Equity, inequity, inequality, equality, all of it is quite messed up in our entire system in terms of access and awareness and stigma. So we also need to be cognizant of the fact as to what all services do we have. We have a helpline that's been running. It's in 15 Indian languages. And we do realize that a lot of distress calls are coming. And I want to focus on the word distress. Do not confuse it with the word disease.
Yes.
And these are two very different things. And we need to also accept and normalize some of this anxiety because it's a human reaction. I mean, it's an unprecedented situation. Wouldn't we all be anxious? If, let's say, somebody is not well in my house, wouldn't I be anxious? If somebody is hospitalized, wouldn't I be anxious? If I lose a loved one, wouldn't I be devastated? If I'm a student and my exam uncertainty is there, wouldn't it worry me? So you accept it. Acceptance in itself is therapeutic. Then you talk about it. So then you seek help and support from people. Whilst we are saying all this, COVID has asked us questions. What is the kind of social security, economic security, emotional security pillars that the society needs to have if any of these things go longer than anticipated, which has already happened, or several years down the line, something like this is going to happen. These are questions for us, which we all need to evolve answers for and understand that the answers will not be here right now. This is not a quick fix. It's an evolving process. The aftermath of this will require a lot more effort collectively by this society, where we need to think about mental health outcomes of COVID as well. But acceptance, talking, sharing, support systems, that is where the solutions lie, not over expertization. In any case, you don't have the experts to be able to deal with the sheer size of the problem that we are looking at.
Correct. Correct. The sheer size of this problem is going to be huge. And it's probably even not even, hit us, the magnitude of it. Before I go back to Jitin, I know, Jitin, you want to make a point, but let me just bring in two of the youngsters and get some, insights into what's going on and how they are tackling it. Anurag, you're a CA aspirant. What was your plan and how has the pandemic hit your, future job plan?
Ma'am, basically everyone have in life there is a plan A, B, and C. If one plan gets delayed due to pandemic, due to any exam reason or due to postponement of exam, then certainly plan B also get delayed. There's a age limit to everything. If again there's our ICI is more like they are making a postponement on a further basis. First postponement, then again the second postponement. There's a tendency of human mind to prepare for exam. Once the tendency breaks, that flow breaks, the everything get disturbed.
Absolutely.
And postponement.
Yeah. So tell me, if you're okay sharing that with us, what was your plan A, B, C, and where have you reached now? Because I know one very frustrating part is finding out every 15 days that it's going to be delayed again and delayed again.
My plan A was to complete my CA exam and then to go for executive MBA. Then if plan A is getting delayed, then I have to reschedule for my plan B.
Yeah. Yeah. On days, Anurag, when it seems all dark and uncertain, what do you tell yourself? And is there a question you would want to ask any of our experts there as to how to tide through this, in an easier way?
I have just a request from experts that how to deal with the tendency of flow of that preparation. If once it get disturbed while on a postponement, then how to re-access ourselves and to think that revise more.
Okay, Jitin, do you want to take that one? How do you tell yourself and, again, to get back into preparation mode?
So it's always a good idea to kind of have joint studies, Of course, in this time, one might not be able to travel, but I have students who are doing joint Zoom calls or they're on, even socializing also for that matter. As the pandemic kind of expanded and it kept on hitting us, on the other hand, a lot of positives also kept on happening. So on one side, you had more apps like House Party, meditation apps, so many things which were happening. So in this particular case, of course, I would say that so maybe if one teams up with two other people, then your joint effort will be definitely better. And maybe you can redraw a plan that if not this, okay, maybe it happens after 6 months. In between, I'll maybe do a small job also on the side. I'll spend half the time in a job and half the time I'll keep on doing my studies. If it is even delayed further, I'm doing a job. I'm getting some practical experience. I have a student who's sitting at house and she played around with an event management company and now she's playing around with an edtech company. She's like, I'm sitting at house. I would have got a job, but right now I would still build up my skills. Also, I'll explore myself that practically what am I good at. Also, I would like to share for the larger audience that, people like Google Digital Garage, they came out with 152 courses across 3 categories: career development, data in tech, and digital marketing. Yeah. So there are 152 courses, all free of charge. Class Central kind of places, all free of charge. Lot of organizations, lot of online players, they extended the free ships. Yeah. Even Audible to listen to audios free of charge. So I think this message has to reach out to the students at various levels, and depending on what you like, there are like Google Digital Garage has 152 courses. Yeah. So whenever I've shared with students, they've been excited about it. There are courses which are 1-hour courses. There are 40-hour courses. very, very practical, doable. There are people who kind of opened up and they used YouTube not only for building up on academics or some activity side, coding side. There are sites like W3 Schools, Code Academy. So I mean, lot of n number of things opened up for the students also, which are available free of charge today. Today morning I was speaking to somebody, and this guy says I like to read books, but how many to buy? I said, why don't you go to Z Library? About 73 lakh books free of charge. What are we talking about? Yeah. So the other side also is expanded. So this positive thing can be combined with our planning, with the creative exercises, some hobbies thrown in between, and one can regain strength and again start fighting.
Okay, take a break, find something more interesting, something that interests you again, add a skill, and then get back to what you have to prepare for. In fact, Swatantra, how many hours in a day do you spend sitting like this in front of a screen with your headphones on, maybe talking to your, other peers who are also preparing for UPSC?
Thanks you. First of all, I want to thanks Mirana for the opportunity talking about the issue, which is one of the least talked about in our society. Talking about the sitting hours, I even can't, sometimes count how many hours continuously I'm sitting.
Yeah.
See, UPSC is an exam which demands continuous efforts. And when COVID hit us, we were incompletely, or there was feelings of fear, anxiety, and uncertainty especially. And the issues such as, the most of the important topic that even experts are suggesting to tackle the situation is taking or seeking help digitally. But here right now I'm representing a rural India or I come from a semi-urban area. There are no access. There are no digital access. Many of us who start preparing for UPSC, they left their smartphones so that they have least distractions. But when COVID hit us, we have to get back to the life which we actually avoiding. Lack of internet access, especially, the basic thing for the preparation for UPSC is the newspapers. Because of COVID, there was, disruption in the logistics. For small areas, from my town, we get national newspapers like The Hindu or Indian Express after a delay of a day. But because of the logistics, there was no access to newspaper or even. So even in a situation which has been called by the economic survey the crisis of century, it's just ours, and we are completely lost of the track.
You are based in Datia right now, right? In Madhya Pradesh. Now,
Yes.
Were
Yes.
you originally also preparing from here, or were you, in some other big city taking a coaching class but had to come back because of COVID?
Ma'am, actually, I was preparing in Delhi.
Yeah.
When lockdown started, I stayed for a month in Delhi, but there are some economic issues that I have to came back to my hometown. I came back to my hometown, but there was of course logistics issues. Then I decided to move to the capital of our state, that is Bhopal. Again, the situation was there, there were extended lockdown in cities like Bhopal, which was been going on for almost of August of the 2020. Those who moved out of Delhi, they have issues of accessibility of the resources in terms of books, newspapers, and those who stayed back in Delhi, many of my friends stayed back. They have basic issue of accessibility of the food, because most of us depending on the food to tiffin centers. Even their work was closed. So in that whole scenario, when we were actually fighting for the survival, and exam like UPSC, which has a success rate of only 1%, cutoff for the final cutoff is only 55%, and we cannot expect nobody can expect us to go into the exam such like UPSC without that level of preparation and even think about of accessing it, or even believing of getting succeeded.
No, you're absolutely right. Because it's one of the toughest things to crack. Takes for many people, takes years of studying and practice and a very, very strict regimen, a lot of discipline and, organized method of going about it. Swatantra, what you raised, I just want to take this across to Dr. Samir Parekh. Dr. Parekh, this is a very big challenge as well, which is how do you switch on and off? You know, you get into that disciplined lifestyle where you say, okay, I'm going to switch off from all the socializing, social media, focus on these studies, then take a break, only do this. This is going to be my plan for the next 3 months, 6 months. And then all of that goes out of the window. Now, how do you get back into the society and then go back into this plan setup again?
Not an easy one, but a couple of things that come to my mind. But I don't subscribe to the entire switch off, switch on, right? I mean, we are always switched on. I mean, that's the way to look at life. Just stay switched on. It's easier said, and I understand that. We've had some unprecedented difficulties. And you are absolutely right that the inequity in what access we have also makes this conversation a very difficult conversation to give one answer, to be honest. I mean, I could have given a different answer to somebody having urban access vis-a-vis somebody not having that access. But one thing I want to say, and this is to all students listening, irrespective of the backgrounds, irrespective of any form of difficulties, there is one thing which is a fact, that COVID in its own different way has also been an equalizer of sorts. All UPSC aspirants, all NEET aspirants, all 12th board students who were going to go have all not been able to go through the way they had planned. I'm not saying that you need to equate yourself to somebody or not. That's not the point. The point is the entire batch across the country has gone through a similar experience. And I have been talking to students even before the exam cancelled. In fact, on an internship I was taking with students, 5-6 days before the exams of the boards got cancelled, I was still telling them that keep studying until you actually hear that something's happening, because studying is in your control, internal locus. What is not in your control? What COVID is doing to the world, not in our control. So if you ask me, continue backing yourself. In all the adversities, keep working hard, keep doing what you can do. Don't count the hours that you were able to clock in, let's say earlier. That's no parameter. But your skill set is still the same. Your aptitude is still the same. Your vision is still the same. Your ability is still the same. Your goal is still the same. Even if it may tweak in a little bit here and there, you just back yourself. And that has to be the approach for young people decades ahead of you. Do not allow yourself to believe that a few months here and there will wipe off the promise of future. It's not going to happen. Decades and decades ahead of you. And you would get what you deserve. Just do not let this external experience, which is not in your control, to impact your intrinsic self, your intrinsic motivation. That is the key. In spite of all adversities, you will need to filter the learnings, and you will need to learn through them and move on and keep moving on.
Yes, Swatantra, you want to say something?
Yes, unfortunately, we didn't have the access to such an insight that Dr. Parikh has, given us, especially during the preparations. I mean, this is the reason. I mean, that the consistency of the students that who were not able to, give exam up to their optimum level of preparations, and we are hearing such demands such as exam relaxations or UPSC extra attempt or any kind of relaxation, even government taking note of it. And I hope that advice that a doctor has given us, given me or to the student community, unfortunately we didn't have that at that time. I'll definitely keep that in mind, and thank you so much, sir, for that insight.
Well, in fact, let me just what was raised here and what Dr. Parikh said, extremely insightful. But Anand, let's build on it a little bit more. There is also a lot of anxiety of being left behind, of lagging. In a highly competitive world, whatever we say, that's what it is. When you've chosen this path, you've made a plan, in 1 year or 3 years or 5 years, you're going to be at a certain point, which gets derailed. But your friends and your peers, they're all already working in the private sector. They're all already earning a certain, amount. And I think that anxiety is also playing on the minds of a lot of our youngsters today. The anxiety of being left behind. How do we deal with that?
I think there are a few pieces here. One, the anxiety of being left behind. For me to feel left behind, I have to compare myself with someone.
Yeah.
I have to compare myself with my peers or other people, or my expectations of what life should be. And I think if we get into a comparison game, we'll never feel happy or at peace in this moment right now, because there's one belief that unfortunately I find it a lot of times in athletes I work with, in students I coach. There's this belief that we have in our culture which has to go, which is it's too late. And I think if we believe that it's too late and we're behind, that sense of loss will make us feel back. Life, there's no race here. There's no, we're not in this race against other people. We're in a race, but the race is with ourselves, so not with anyone else. And I think it's looking at it and say, okay, fine, let me get out of this definition of success, that success is competing with everyone else or comparing myself with everyone else. Success is being the best version of me today. That's it. And I think if we can, one thing to think about out of anxiety is to get out of the what if. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if I don't make it? Change the what if question to a how can I? Then you're no longer a victim in your life. You can actually take charge and say, okay, how can I, someone said earlier, how can I learn? How can I absorb? How can I become a learning machine? How can I add to my skills? How can I add to my talents? The sense of time of me being left behind is artificial and it is an illusion. Time is in our hands. It's our energy and our focus. Where our focus goes, our energy flows. And if we want to focus on comparing ourselves to others, if we want to focus on people ahead of me and I'm behind, then you're only going to bring your own self-worth down and feel less than. You have your own timeline and accept what life is right now. Acceptance, someone said earlier, is powerful. It is. Accept where you are right now. Focus on what you want in your future. Your dreams have not been delayed. Focus on how you can add more value to yourself right now and be that learning machine, and get out of this comparison game. There is only one version of you. There's only one unique you.
Yes.
So, for more focused, comparison is the thief of joy. And no person I've met that's happy in life comes from comparison.
Yes.
You've got to get out.
But it's I must say that it's tempting to do that, and it's a big challenge to find the strength in you to not compare, and to not get impacted. But that's the trick, right? That's the challenge. That's what you need to overcome right now, to find your happiness and your own self-worth from within, your own worth from within you. I get the point that you're making, Anand, and I hope that more and more youngsters are able to imbibe that in them. I want to go across to a viewer who's calling us from Vijayawada. Funny is on the line, and Funny is also a CA aspirant and wanted to speak with us. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Ma'am, and good evening, all the members. Yes, I've even listening about what you are telling regarding the students and how to reduce the stress. But me as a CS friend, I'm just pursuing this course from past 4 years, 4 to 5 years, including this article training and all. So many pressures we have faced. And when coming to the pandemic, in the first wave of COVID, I have tested positive just before exams. So that time I have opted out to January. But I mean, I have not written well in that attempt. And even now, when the exams approached, my whole family got tested positive with that. So again, there was very delay. I mean, like, I'm not able to concentrate on the studies. Like, I was just helping them and all. So even I tested again with mild symptoms, and I was suffering with back pain severely. And I was just watching this show also by taking support of my back. So, I mean, even my parents, their view also is not changing in the way like they're also even by seeing me, they're also getting stressed that I'm unable to complete the course, and they're just thinking that I'm just not started earning when comparing to the peer parents, children and all who have taken the BTech and other courses. So there is also immense pressure apart from my institute decisions and all, like postponement or not giving some clarity and all. Even I have pressure from the society and even from the parent side.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Even if I follow all the tips, I mean, like taking meditation and all, but my thoughts are eating my brain continuously. I just want to escape seriously from all this mess.
At the cost of losing a very valuable viewer, I'm going to tell you to sometimes watch a little less of news and watch something else which will help you relieve some of this stress. But outside of that, I want to go across to Dr. Natkin and see, Dr. Natkin, if you would have, anything to add here. Obviously a very tricky situation. There is economic stress, there is expectations and anxieties of parents being projected on this youngster as well, and the society's questions adding on to that burden. Now, what do you tell yourself in such a time?
I think Funny makes a very, very, very pertinent point there, where he says that when the situation around me is such, telling me all these tips that you're telling us is of no use. And I think it's very important to remember that. And I'm a public health professional, so I think in terms of systems. Now, what we are saying to individuals is, listen, the responsibility is all yours. You take care of yourself. We are not going to take care of the education system. We are not going to take care of the employment. We are not going to change the ecosystem around you. We are not going to make it any easier for you in this world. What you have to do is be positive. Now, that is probably the most heartless thing to say to anyone in this world, let alone someone who does not know what their future is. Because there is empirical evidence to show that every year of education lost is leading to loss of around 10% of that person's future income. Right? So it's easy to kind of do sloganeering and say, be positive, and you have to kind of let it go. It's all very fine. But that means that we are allowing people who manage these systems to get away with not doing what they should be, that they're supposed to be doing. And that's what Funny kind of said when he said, I've tried all these tips, they don't work. Because society still expects him to kind of finish his exams, get a job. His parents are pressuring him to a certain extent, so without probably saying it, but they expect him to get a job. He has to compare himself with peers, but even if he does not, he needs to get a job and get food on his plate. So how can we say that this is, you just need to be positive and kind of start thinking about alternative plans? No, I don't think that is right. I don't think it's fair. To a certain extent, yes, I agree with what Sabir said. Locus of control, we should focus on what we can control and work on that. But at the same time, we shouldn't be dumping all the responsibility on the individual. It's society's responsibility. It's a multi-sectoral responsibility to reduce all of this stress, distress, psychological problems, emotional problems that are arising because of this, and not dumping all of that responsibility on the young person to take care of themselves. Absolutely not acceptable to me.
No, so let's say a part of the systemic problem is the way things are structured in our country, which while we every day question the government and hope for changes, better healthcare infrastructure, better services, all of that will take time. A part of the problem, like is being pointed out here, is the society, is people. And I think that's a very crucial thing to also discuss, Dr. Sekar, when it comes to mental health. A lot of what also happens to us is because people around us don't really know what is appropriate behavior, what is to be said, what their words and how their words impact us, how their expectations impact us, and what they do to us. Or even when we are feeling a little low, what should their behavior be? How should they tackle it? Family members, parents, peers, or people don't know. But it's very important that if we want to fix this and address this issue, it has to be everybody's awareness that needs to be addressed. Dr. Sekar.
Well, the final things what I would like to talk about is that, number one, let us all know that these are normal reactions for an abnormal situation, what we are having presently. And it is very true about our young students and the youths. But the major information I would like to share with you, that the demographic dividend of India is something the best in the world. So we have 40% of them currently, which no other country has. So don't be bothered about a future prospect in terms of getting a better thing. Have always a sort of a alternative sort of a tips for you to look at how you would go about it. And rather than looking at inwardly saying that I have lost, get out of your traditional mode, get on to the contemporary sort of aspect. It is not that the only single mode of a CA aspirant or the other things is going to help you. What the skills you have developed should be able to get on to the other one. And in this sort of a situation, whatever is the thing, follow four things. What you want to, what you are having in terms of a pented up feeling, share it with others who could be actually listening to you, and externalize the type of interest what you are having, and make sure your own behavior is respectful when you are talking to your other colleagues and family members, and give some amount of appropriate time and space if you want to get out of it. It is not that by tomorrow we could sort out all the issues. And as somebody else said in this panel, work together among your own colleagues so that you get out of this particular problem. Communicate with each other, including your family, how to sort out the problems and how to come out of it. You need to have some creative thinking rather than a criticality that everything is going away. So have that creativity in your mind as a particular skill coming into you. And for all the problems, there are some decisions what you have to make, but look at alternatives. Like my friend Anurag said, that he has plan A, plan B. Why not have a plan C and D also? So let us keep moving along with that and talk about comfort, whatever the feelings you are having with somebody who are very close, and share your feelings. Don't keep your feelings in a pented up mode, like my friend from Vijayawada who was talking about what are the thing. And my request is not only to the persons who are undergoing as students or job seekers, but it is also to the parents and the larger society. As families and communities, we need to pay attention to our children's emotion, these kids' emotions, and be supportive to them and support them to the thing. The last but not the least, if you have an uncontrollable stress, it leads to certain other hormonal imbalances in the body that can affect the larger functioning of the brain. Calm your stressed mind during this pandemic. There are large amount of externalization of your interest in varied other activities, as well as getting into some sort of a relaxation and recreation. Enjoy yourself along with the current protocols, along with your own friends and other things by being on a virtual media, but at the same time, don't get addicted to the virtual media. Thank you.
Fair enough, fair enough. Let me just quickly go across to Dr. Dhawan on the phone line calling us from Chandigarh. Good evening, Dr. Dhawan. What would you like to say?
Yeah, good evening, Tanvi. My pointed question is about the two yardsticks followed in this country regarding each and everything. Now, this is regarding my daughter who was to prepare for PG medical entrance. And twice the PG NEET and AIMS exam has been postponed.
Yes.
Once the admit card has been issued, the exam should happen. It was 3 hours exams with 200 centers across the country and 80,000 students only. If we are capable of holding the elections, capable of doing the Kumbh Mela, allowing farmers agitation, and allowing the IPL, why not the exams? There is a lot of anxiety among the students, and switch on and switch off is really hazardous to health. I also give sermons to my patients every day, but it's extremely difficult to watch your child undergoing symptoms of anxiety and depression. I think there should be a lot of coordination between the agencies who do the exams and the government, so that once the date is announced, the exam should happen.
Yes, well, I think we're all struggling and learning as we go along with this virus and this pandemic. Plans that were made had to be changed and then changed again and then changed again. And honestly, I understand, Dr. Dhawan, what you're saying, but when it comes to these exams, there is no easy answer. Some want it cancelled, some want it held, some want another system of merit or entrance to be figured out. So it's a tricky path, but the impact on our young minds, that needs to be watch out for, and that needs to also be acknowledged and handled. Swapna is on the phone line calling us from Hyderabad. Yes, Swapna, good evening.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, sir, everyone. I'm Swapna from Hyderabad. I had my last attempt, UPSC attempt in 2020. We are all around 10,336 candidates, aspirants who had last attempt in 2020. We had been through so much, like it is one of the toughest exams in the country. And we didn't expect this sudden lockdown or this health issues. We had to go through so much during this time, and postponement of exams, uncertainty for the last attempters, especially because UPSC didn't come up with any clarification whether we will be getting an extra attempt or not next year. So we were gone through so much uncertainties. Like few of the aspirants, they had deaths in their families, and few themselves were COVID positive just before the exam or on the day of the exam. And people who were in rural area, they had to migrate from Delhi or wherever they were preparing. They had to migrate from that location to their houses where there had no facility, be it internet connection or the newspaper or anything. So people from northeast areas especially or JNK, they did not have internet connection. And also especially married women, they had to, and also working women. So they had to manage their family, and also they had to manage their kids' job, and also they had to go through this severe preparation. UPSC needs at least 1 to 2 years of rigorous preparation.
Correct.
When these postponed things were happening, and also there was so much uncertainty, we asked the government for the postponement. It was postponed for around 4 to 5 months. But still, if you look at the cases last year, September 26th was the highest number of cases we have recorded.
Yeah.
And October 4th was our exam. So how can we expect someone with that mindset to give our exam properly?
That's very important point that you raised, Swapna. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off here because there is less time, but I do want to address this point that you raised, Dr. Natkin. If I can come to you. Again, many cases where you've gone through personal loss, and it would be actually a time to grieve. But how do you tell yourself that you don't have that option, that you need to go back and give this exam and get yourself that job?
Yeah, again, a difficult one, because this is, I hate using the word unprecedented because we're using it so much, but I mean, there's no option but to use it. But these unprecedented times are for everyone, including mental health professionals and anyone within the mental health space who is providing help and support. So all of us are learning as we go along, because this situation of grieving is absolutely abnormal. It's not allowing people the right spaces to grieve. You sometimes not able to see your loved ones and go through all of the rituals and the processes that are built into our culture and context, which allow us to deal with some of these distress that comes with grieving. So I guess what you could expect is probably that the grieving process is going to be slightly different from what you usually see. It's probably going to be prolonged. And you probably would have to apply the same principles that I spoke about earlier. You talk to someone who can support you and try to do things that will allow you to get out of this through self-care and using various other techniques. But if it does not work at all, and if your kind of grief leads to other more severe mental health symptoms, then you need to seek help from professionals.
Okay.
Being mindful of the fact that even mental health professionals are kind of struggling with this issue, because as I said, this is something as we learn as we go along, not something that we have experienced ever in the past.
Yes.
And before I end, quickly, Tanvi, I know you're running short of time. Just one quick point. Again, we probably need to focus on the content of what the earlier, earlier person, the questions that were asked you will see that a lot of the questions were around the system and
Correct.
how the system is not taking care of
Dr.
you,
Natkin,
rather than saying that I am feeling depressed or anxious.
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Nadkarni. And that's something that collectively we have to fix. We have to all play our own roles in that and not put the entire burden on the individuals who is going through it. But self-care, find yourself somebody who can be your pillar of strength, your support system. If only it is to listen, maybe you both understand what is happening, what you're going through, and if things get really difficult, seek out professional help. Those are the three things that you must know as you go through this unprecedented time, like many, many people across the world, across our country as well. Completely out of time. A big thank you to everybody who joined us on this conversation.